This video has been coming for a long while now. It concerns one of my favorite Disney songs of all time. I think it's one of the greatest Disney love songs ever written. However, it doesn't go with any movie. The movie that it was supposed to appear in doesn't exist. The song was reworked, however, to be in the movie Wish. And promise us one day. To no longer be a love song and not really make sense in the story whatsoever. At All Costs was originally meant to be a romantic song in the original version of Wish, and the writer of the song said that she had ambitions that it would be played at weddings and things. And I think that if it had appeared in the original movie that it was supposed to, it would have. However, that's not exactly how it worked out, didn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about the greatest fumble from Disney of all time. A story that is so sad that even whenever I listen to At All Costs, even though I love the song, it does fill me with some sadness because of how it played out in real life. This is the story of Disney's Wish. Now, Wish was the brand new animated film that was supposed to commemorate Disney's 100th anniversary, and there was a lot of buzz around this film as such, at least from Disney fans, about what it would be. But ever since the first trailer, there was controversy around the film. People did not like the way it was animated. People did not like the trailers. They didn't even like the songs that they were hearing. I had optimism because as a big fan of Disney princesses, especially in Disney animated movies, these movies really mean a lot to me and are some of the movies that gave me my love for film. I really wanted to have hope for the film, but all the way up to the lead up of the film, there was a lot of controversy around it because people could see that it wasn't going to be a good movie. And then the film finally released for Disney's 100th anniversary, and what we were treated to is awful animation that couldn't even get composition right, terrible song sequences played out, a story that made absolutely no sense, a theme that made absolutely no sense, and some of the worst songs in Disney history, where the lyrics did not even make sense. I'm a star! Watch out, world, here I are! The movie seemed like it was trying to mimic classic Disney films without understanding what even made them work in the beginning. The villain was the worst that we had ever seen and had the worst villain song we had ever heard.
Keep the name, I'm magnificent. I put the eye and I'm omnipotent. Hellfire, dark fire, now Gypsy, it's your turn.
And the theme of the film is supposed to be that a wish is the most important thing, to the point that it is crushing when you have a dream that will not come true. But the way it plays out in the film is a highly confusing way. I guess you give up your wish to the king who holds it forever and then grants it to select people, and the big crime of the king is he is withholding people's wishes. It was a really confusing story in terms of its mechanics. The best thing about Wish was its credits that showed all the wonderful films that had come before it. But this was the worst film that could possibly commemorate the 100th anniversary of Walt Disney, and it got a lot of bashing at the time and was a box office failure. However, something very interesting happened after the movie's release. People found the books that describe the original thought process of the film and the scrapped ideas. And they found the song At All Costs and how it had been reworked. And how that was amazing to me, because as I watched Wish, the one part that moved me, the one part that I felt anything for, was the At All Costs sequence. And it didn't sound like it fit. It sounded like a romantic song. And sure enough, we found the original there, and it was a great song, and it was supposed to be a romance song. What we found to go along with that is pieces of artwork of the original concepts that song would go with. That in the original version of Wish, Asha was supposed to meet a star boy, and he went through different iterations. At one point, he was supposed to be a younger version of her grandfather, but it did seem that at some point it was supposed to be a romantic interest for her, that the star would have actually been a boy. We also heard that there was going to be a power couple in the original film, in the king and queen and their evil scheme. And this original concept for the film people took to heart. Like, they really loved this. After that, there became a brand new fan base over this original concept of Wish. Like, no one talks about the film itself anymore, but a brand new fan base was created over this original concept. There have been cosplays done of Asha and the Starboy from that original version. But what's even more amazing is all of the fan art and all of the animation that has been done over this original concept, wanting the romance between Asha and the Starboy. Like, I am amazed. Videos with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of views, talking about the original version, making fan fiction about what that version would have been, and creating their own animations and storyboards for what have been played out in the movie. The biggest one for me is somebody did this full render of a CGI sequence between Asha and the Starboy to the at all cost version because they loved the original concept so much. So if this fan base around this version of the film that didn't exist is this big, can you imagine how big that fan base would be if that movie did exist? Like, with all the fan art and just the love for this original version and all the time and effort that has gone to creating animations for it, you just see the passion that fans have for it. And it's made me think more than once that Disney could have had another phenomenon on their hands, like Frozen, if they had done that original version, because that is what their fan base wanted. That is what really inspired their fan base. But why didn't they do it? Well, I think that there are several reasons why it didn't go through, but one of the reasons I think it's clear why they didn't the romantic version that was originally supposed to be is because there's been this idea up to this point that to have a love interest is not really the ideal for a female character these days, and that she is stronger and more of her own person if she's just completely free from all of that. We've seen that as a pattern, especially with Disney properties, that the ideal for the modern day female character is to not have any romantic attachments, even if that isn't all what her character is, just no romantic attachments. And that is a false idea. Just because you have a romantic attachment does not mean that you're not your own person, does not invalidate you as a strong person whatsoever. In fact, done right, it can strengthen your story. And as we can see, it can really inspire people. And as we see, the Disney fan base actually wants that. Like, Disney needs to understand their fan base loves all of their old original animated films. A lot of those were fairy tale romances. And that is why the fan base was so inspired by this original concept. But the reason that they didn't do it is because they had this idealized fantasy that they thought that the mainstream public would want, or that they wanted, that they didn't actually agree with. So this wonderful movie that Wish could have been was essentially stepped away from because of trying to appease a group of people that does not exist. All the Disney fans I've seen are very clear they would have liked the romance, and they don't agree with this idea that if you have a love interest, it makes the female character weaker or anything. And it seems that because of the bombing of Wish, Disney has learned some of its lessons. Jennifer Lee, who was really the leader of Walt Disney Animation Studios at this time, has been ousted out, and it seems that they are trying to get back to classic storytelling. And in other divisions, like for example Pixar, we've already seen progress there with Inside Out 2. I think that at least in some areas of Disney, there is still some magic left, and there are still people who want to go back to those old movies that they still used to make and understand their audience. Inside Out 2 showed that to me, and I'm fully expecting films like Zootopia 2 to be good this year. However, even if they get back on track, even if they start making good movies again, which good animation that understand their audience, there's still this tragedy in the background. We never got that Wish story. When we listen to that song At All Costs, or we see fan arts or things like that, to me, it's like echoes of what would have been. Imagine if something behind the scenes had prevented Disney from making Beauty and the Beast, or Frozen, or Tangled, or Aladdin, or The Lion King, and all you had was storyboards and bits and pieces of what it was. And essentially, you would just be looking at a classic story that another world would have gotten and would have really loved and would have really been important to a lot of people. That's what it is when I see Wish. I see the Disney classic that never was, and that's really unfortunate. This is the one movie that I would recommend they actually go back and remake because I think that it would be worth it in any sort of capacity. But if that never happens, I want this to be a lesson learned. This is why it matters to me when I still see people holding back on their stories and preventing themselves from going certain areas because they're afraid of what people will think, or they're trying to appease a certain group, even if there's nothing wrong with the idea like having a love interest. These sort of restrictions will kill storytelling. They will kill wonderful stories that we could have had. Just imagine if certain classics like Snow White or Sleeping Beauty or Cinderella or so many of the classics that Walt Disney had to fight to make were never made. These are so important to the world, and one should never let some sort of outside force or some sort of ideal that they're trying to appease push them away from basic good fairy tale storytelling that their audience actually wants. You might end up with a tragedy like Wish, where we're just stuck on the outside looking at what could have been and the classic that never was. But the big irony of all of this is the theme of Wish was how tragic it is to not have your dream realized. And when I think of that, I think of the lady that talked about how she wanted At All Costs to be a song that was played at weddings, and she wanted it to be this big hit. And I know that it would have been if it had been played in the original film. And that's now a dream that will never be realized. And that's the real irony and tragedy of the movie of Wish, that it went against its big theme, that a dream is such a valuable thing, it's a part of you, and that it is painful when it is never realized. And then it went on and did it itself by never realizing the dream that these original writers and animators had of that original film. And it's honestly the saddest story I've ever heard in animation. Perhaps maybe people can learn a lesson from it. A depressing video, I know, but thank you all for watching. If you want to support this channel, please consider becoming a member or a patron. Do you think that Disney can ever recover from the tragedy of Wish, or that they will ever remake the film? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you guys next time.